welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm S.W. Griffin, also known as Stan the Man Griffin, but you can call me either. We're going to be talking about black conservative content creators who are defending Charlie Kirk are grifters. Black conservative content creators defending Charlie Kirk are grifters. And what is a grifter? A grifter is a person that uses sleight of hand or deceit to gain your confidence for monetary gain, basically. And that's what they're doing. These black conservative content creators, they are using the conservative Republican message to gain your confidence because they're making money off of it. They know good and well that there are things that are seriously wrong with the conservative Republican message, the whole ideology. Now, neither is the Democratic ideology perfect either. It has a slew of problems, but me personally, I don't push any of those ideologies because I'm a Christian. Now, have I voted for Republicans in the past? Yes. Have I voted for Democrats in the past? Yes. But I do not push their ideology as a save all or the one big thing that will cure all ills in society, because I know that's not true. Only Jesus Christ can do that. But these black conservatives that are pushing the Republican conservative ideology are grifters. They're doing it for money. They know that they can make money off of it. And let's get busy. Let's talk about it.
Let's look at something completely different now. This clip was sent to me by about a dozen of you. Yesterday, in another attack on DEI programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and in an attack on wokeness, etc., right-wing organizer, I guess I would call him, Charlie Kirk, said that when he gets on an airplane and he sees a black pilot, folks, he says he sees a black pilot, he's worried about whether the pilot is actually qualified. Now, this comes after Charlie Kirk questioned the worth of Martin Luther King Day. Let's take a listen to it and then let's discuss.
And that's why I think this United story and the DEI story hits so hard, because we've all been in the back of a plane when the turbulence hits, or when you're flying through a storm and you're like, I'm so glad I saw the guy with the right stuff and the square jaw get into the cockpit before we took off. And I feel better now thinking about that. No, I mean, like, you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Well, that's the you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done that before. That's not an immediate. No, you wouldn't have done that before. That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality. It actually sounds like it is. This is the movement that he has inspired. Now, I've heard similar stuff about female pilots, and often it starts with "I'm sorry, but." When you hear "I'm sorry, but," it's very often something horribly sexist, racist, or xenophobic that's coming. Now, there's a couple.
So there we have it. There we have Charlie Kirk talking about if he sees a black airplane pilot, a black pilot, that he really hopes that he can fly the plane. Now, let's be real about this. Do you really think that United Airlines, Delta Airlines, or British Airways will let a black person fly one of their planes if they're not actually qualified to fly their planes? Would you actually think they would just hire a black person on DEI only, and they not being qualified to operate that plane in the air safely? He said the same thing. Charlie Kirk said the same thing about black doctors. If I see a black doctor, boy, I really hope he knows how to operate. Well, let's take a look at Ben Carson. Dr. Ben Carson, who was part of the Trump administration in 2016. He is one of the best neurologists in the world. This man operated on conjoined twins at the brain and successfully separated them, and they lived. Now, he is a brilliant doctor. He's a graduate from Johns Hopkins University. He is brilliant. He's a brilliant doctor, but he's an idiot as a politician. Let's be clear. You can be brilliant in one area and be a complete nincompoop in another area. Your expertise and your brilliance in one area does not translate to all areas of your life or all different subjects. A person can be a brilliant politician, but a terrible surgeon. A person can be a brilliant surgeon, but a terrible politician. Dr. Ben Carson, he actually said this. Dr. Ben Carson said Obamacare is likened to slavery. He likened Obamacare to slavery. Well, let's analyze that for a second. You have people now, 30 million Americans who didn't have insurance before can go to the hospital because of Obamacare and get their high blood pressure, their diabetes taken care of, or any other ailment that they suffer. They can get it taken care of at a reasonable price now because of Obamacare. So you trying to tell me that if they go to the doctor and their doctor prescribes them high blood pressure medication, that before he can dispense them the prescription for the medication, that he actually rips their shirts off, ties ropes around their arms, and strings them up and beats them with a whip? How many pills you want this week, Mr. Jackson? 30? Okay. 30 lashes you get. What if you got lashed with whips every time you went to the doctor's office for your blood pressure medicine or your diabetes medication? Now that would be likened unto slavery. But there's nobody getting beat with a whip. No black people are getting beat with whips when they go to the doctor for their blood pressure medication or diabetes medication or whatever ailment that they have. This is insane. So Dr. Benjamin Carson, he's a brilliant surgeon, but he's an idiot as a politician. Like I said before, just because you're brilliant in one area, it doesn't transfer to every area or every subject that you tackle. There are certain things that I would never try to do. I'm not a surgeon. I would never try to do surgery. If you're asking me to operate on someone, they're going to die because I don't know squat. And so for Charlie Kirk to say that if he sees a black pilot, well, I really hope that they can fly the plane. And if we see that square-jawed guy, well, we're really glad. See, if he's a square-jawed white guy, then it's okay. If that isn't racism, see, there's no way that you can be a black man and not see that as a racist remark. If you don't see that as a racist remark, then you got some serious issues or you're ignoring it for monetary gain. And this is what I'm saying about these black content creators. They hear this stuff. They know what's going on, but they are ignoring the racism in it because they're making money off pushing the conservative right-wing agenda. They're making money off of it. They're grifters is what they are. Let's continue.
This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. You know, I don't know how long it's going to take for some people, not you, of course, but some people out there to put the pieces together to couple these two things. This in this hand is me railing on month after month after month, year after year about the Republican Party being the largest white supremacy organization on the planet. Couple that with all of the evidence of the things that I say. All of the instances of Republicans being racist, saying racist things, outing themselves as fundamentally thinking racist things. Charlie Kirk, the freakish, pumpkin-headed, twitchy weirdo, was on his show maligning affirmative action and in the process maligning certain black women, Michelle Obama, Joanne Reed, Ketanji Brown Jackson, her name of which he mispronounces, of course. I think there was somebody else in there. Sheila Jackson Lee, maybe? We're going to get to it. And he really outs himself as someone who is thinking just like, and I don't believe it's a coincidence, just like a white supremacist. Saying that the only reason these brilliant ladies that he mentions, brilliant ladies, the only reason they got into college is because they took a white person's spot. Watch this and let's talk about it.
You really have to wonder In fact, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously.
Now, that clip was from Jesse Dollemore, the Jesse Dollemore podcast, and he is a white guy. I wanted to show you some things from white people, too, because if I just only played black people who are complaining about this, you will say, well, that's just black people not really understanding that these people really aren't racist. They just have an opinion. No. These are white people too, and they see it as racism. They see it as racism. Okay? And it is racism. Like I said at the beginning of the top of this video, I have voted for Republicans and Democrats in the past. I do not push any of the ideologies of any of the parties. I just vote for who I think is best, that's going to get policies done that are in favor of the American people, black and white, that help this country out. That is how I see it. I don't push an ideology because I'm a Christian, and when Jesus returns, there won't be a Republican Party or Democratic Party or liberalism or conservatism. None of these things line up with the Word of God. Neither does the U.S. Constitution line up with the Word of God, nor the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence, nor does communism or Marxism. There won't be any of those things mentioned ever again when Jesus reigns in his kingdom. Let's get that straight, okay? Capiche? Now, he makes the point, Jesse Dollemore makes the point that he's always showing these things and balancing these things out in the public eye. And you trying to tell me that these black conservatives have not seen these same videos and have ignored the racism that is in these videos, and yet they go on YouTube and other platforms and still push the conservative right-wing ideology and say that people that think that Charlie Kirk is racist are evil and devils. I heard them say it. Why are they doing that? Because they are grifting off the Republican conservative ideology message. They are making money off of it. It is about money with them. That is what this is about. It isn't about telling the truth. It's about making money. And they'll lie about it. They'll push the Republican agenda. They'll say that Trump ain't never did nothing wrong. And they'll push that stuff every time they get a chance because they're making money from it. It has nothing to do with Jesus Christ. It has nothing to do with righteousness. It has nothing to do with the Word of God. It is with them about money. They are black grifters. Let's continue.
Charlie Kirk is on record stating that the 1964 Civil Rights Act was a mistake.
We note in our piece that Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. And Kirk's self-described very, very radical view that the country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true. As we note in the piece, Kirk has previously described Kirk as a hero and a civil rights icon. It's true. I used to be wrong. What inspired Kirk to shift his view on MLK? Why does Kirk think that MLK is a bad guy? When Kirk says that MLK says, quote, one good thing he didn't believe, what does he mean by that? Why does Kirk believe passing the Civil Rights Act was a mistake? Now, again, apparently they don't listen to the show because we do that at least once a week, right? Once a week we talk about why the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. The Civil Rights Act was a new founding where we decided to discard the U.S. Constitution and reconstitute the story, the mantra, the creed, and the vision of America. And you even see this in Republican circles as well. Well, they say, well, the Civil Rights Act corrected a lot of the errors of the Constitution. No, it didn't. The Civil Rights Act was a completely new creation. Of course, it was well intended by some. We have acknowledged that many times. But the Civil
Now, you heard Charlie Kirk talk about the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. and that it actually took away people's rights. Let's go back to the founding fathers, and I want to make this point. When the founding fathers wrote the U.S. Constitution, George Washington and plenty of others, Thomas Jefferson and other people who were part of the writing of the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, were all slave owners. When Thomas Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal," at that particular time, they did not see black people as full human beings. They were only considered 3/5 of a human being. So when they wrote that we hold these truths to be all evident that all men are created equal, it did not include black people or Indians, because they did not see them as full human beings. They did not see them as 100% human beings equal to them as white men. They saw them lesser than. They saw them not quite fully human beings. So what the Civil Rights Act did, it restored a lot of the rights to black people to what should have been put there in the Constitution. What Charlie Kirk is actually arguing is that black people do not have the right to have the same rights as white people. They do not have the right to have the same rights as white people. Now, as a black man, or any man that has any common sense, white or black, and when you hear that, you say that's racism. It's flat out racism. So you're trying to tell me these black content creators on YouTube and other platforms are pushing this agenda, and they hear that and they can't see that that's racism, but yet they're going to declare Charlie Kirk as a hero, a civil rights hero? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. It is, as Eddie Murphy used to say, that's so ridiculous. It's ridiculous, man, for them to even believe that. But they know it's wrong. They don't care because they're making money off pushing that right-wing conservative agenda. I'm telling you, people, this is about money. I heard one of those black conservative guys that push the Republican conservative agenda say he made more money when Trump. This is when Joe Biden was in office. I made more money when Trump was in office because he was pushing the Trump agenda, and he got his followers from that. He had a lot of white followers that was, that's right, brother, Trump, push that Trump. So he was making more money. That's what this is about, people. And I'm going to put on the screen later on the video some of these black content, conservative black content creators. That's what this is about. Let's continue.
Do you support the Civil Rights Act?
In spirit, but not how it's written.
Why?
It's too broad and paved its way for the persecution. For example, they're using the Civil Rights Act to put men in locker rooms like Riley was in.
How? Which article?
Article 4 or 5, I think. I actually don't know specifically, but the Civil Rights Act is being used for by the trans movement right now because they say that they are women, therefore they demand an accommodation of women's rights. Riley can riff on this. They're using the Civil Rights Act literally to have access into men female locker rooms.
So what would you change about the Civil Rights Act?
I wouldn't make it as broad. I would make it much more crisp and concrete, and I wouldn't have it necessarily. I would also get rid of the disparate impact component of the Civil Rights Act.
It evolved into, well, it just went too far. There were certain elements of it that just went too far. That's right. The guy who didn't get as much as an associate's degree in anything related to civil rights or laws or governance or history or black studies, or anything related to that. Just because he was Charlie Kirk, he can make that statement. And not just make that statement to his podcast. He went in front of college people, college students, and went on campuses.
That last gentleman was Tim Black and his podcast, and he was making a statement about Charlie Kirk going to colleges, spreading this message that the civil rights movement was a bad thing. Now, here's why people need to understand why they are fighting against what happened in the civil rights movement. You know why? The biggest reason why? Barack Obama became president. That's why. It is the biggest indignity that they feel that they have ever suffered in the lifetime of the history of white people in America is when a black man became president, and for 8 years they had to wake up with a bellyache knowing that that freaking black man was in office. That freaking effing black man. Is that effing black man still in office? And they probably was calling him an N-word behind closed doors. Every time I wake up, my stomach hurts because of that freaking Nigger is in office. I can't stand it. So, in order for that to never to happen again, you got to destroy the whole civil rights movement, the Voting Rights Act for black people, the 1965 voting. You have to destroy all that and take away black people's rights again, diminish their effect in public so that that can never happen again. That is what this is all about. Let's remove their rights. Let's take them back before 1965 during the Jim Crow era when they didn't have any rights. And we'll never have to worry about another Barack Obama ever again. We'll never have to suffer another indignity of having a black man rise to the highest office in the land ever again. That's what this is about, people. It is about that. In 2008, Barack Obama became the first black United States of American president, and they're still pissed off about it to this day. And you got black conservatives out there pushing that agenda because they're making money off of it. It's a racist thing. Now, how as a black person can you sit there and be pissed off that the first black president, Barack Obama, became president as a black man, and you be pissed off about that? How could that affect you as a black man and say it was a bad thing? Well, Barack Obama wasn't no good president. How can you be as a black man say that that's a hateful thing? That's an ignorant thing. That's a bad thing that happened in America because a black man became president. Here, I'm going to say this. I do not push parties or ideology, but I will say this. The current iteration of the Republican Party, there will never be a black president. Ever. Ever. There will never be a black Republican president. It had to come through the Democratic Party. It had to come through the party that elected John F. Kennedy. It had to come through the party that elected Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The Democratic Party was the former party of slavery up until 1927. But when the 1927 flood hit and Calvin Coolidge was in office, the black people in the South, under the flood that hit the 1927 flood in the Mississippi Valley, were treated so terrible that they left the Republican Party in droves. It was one of the greatest exoduses ever. We'll talk about more on that subject later.
Where MLK, in my personal opinion and based on every objective analysis, he actually gave us more race focus and less emphasis on character and conduct. Because here we are 60 years later. Do we talk about race less or more in the last couple of decades? I'm not only blaming MLK for this, but his core driving philosophy was not about a colorblind society. That is a line in one of his speeches. He would actually be closer to a race Marxist almost akin to a DEI type philosopher if you go deep into his writings, especially later in his life. So, and I think we as conservatives and Christians must reconsider some of the mythologies and some of the icons and the symbols that we hold up, especially as we try to reorient ourselves in a broken culture.
So, why is it that he is so focused on the 1960 civil rights movement? Why is that such a big problem for Charlie Kirk and other white conservatives? Because what Martin Luther King Jr. did in leading the civil rights movement, it led to us having Barack Obama as president. They know that. You can trace Barack Obama's rise to the presidency of the United States back to the civil rights movement led by Dr. Martin Luther King. And this is why they are attacking that so badly. Because if you eliminate the civil rights movement of 1965 led by Dr. King, you will not have a Barack Obama. And I'm going to say this. If the Republican Party were not the racists that they were, you know who should have been the first black president? General Colin Powell. I loved me some Colin Powell. I had more respect for Colin Powell than I do most pastors in churches today. That's how honest of a man he was. But the Republican Party was not going to have that. So they knocked Colin Powell down. They dropped their pants. They took a poop in his face and said, "You are a nigger. Carry our water, boy, because you are our water boy. Carry our water. We don't want you as the leader of this nation because your skin, you are still a black man." So when Barack Obama ran for president, he endorsed when Barack Obama ran for president, Colin Powell endorsed Barack Obama. And you know what the conservative says? Are you selling out? You only endorsing him because he was black. Well, the truth of the matter was they weren't going to vote for him because he was black. Not because he had bad policies, not because he was a smarter. The man became president of the Harvard Law Review. How do you get to be the president of the Harvard Law Review if you're an ignorant, stupid guy? Barack Obama graduated at the top of his class. He was one of the smartest guys to ever come out of Harvard. But they didn't want to see it that way. They didn't want to see it. People like Megyn Kelly and Sean Hannity, they hate his guts to this day because he became president. But let's continue.
Charlie Kirk was a modern day MLK. That is what we are seeing and hearing today a lot on social media. And it's confounding to me because they were so completely different. They were absolutely nothing alike. They did not believe in the same things. As a matter of fact, Charlie Kirk did not like Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King believed in racial equality, social justice, economic fairness. He dealt with things like segregation. Charlie Kirk did not agree with any of that.
So that was Mr. Global making some differences between what Charlie Kirk's believed in and what Martin Luther King Jr. believed in. As he said, Martin Luther King Jr. believed in racial justice, social equality, equal rights for everyone. Charlie Kirk didn't believe in any of those things. This is why they're so pissed off at what happened at the Civil Rights Movement. What the Civil Rights Movement brought was Barack Obama as president. That is the stinker for them. It is the thing that bites them in the butt. It is a thorn in their side, and it will be a thorn in the crown of their brow until the day they die, because they're not going to let go of that racism. But I'm going to go back and backtrack a little bit. When I was talking earlier about the 1927 flood that flooded the Mississippi, and Calvin Coolidge was president. Well, during that time, Calvin Coolidge's Commerce Secretary was Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover made a deal with the poor blacks and poor whites that lived along the Mississippi to blow up the levees to divert the floodwaters from destroying the affluent downtown Mississippi towns and New Orleans. And so he made a deal to blow up the levees with them, and then he said that he would reimburse them for destroying their homes along the Mississippi to save these big affluent cities. Well, in 1928, Herbert Hoover ran for president, and he reneged on the deal. He did not do anything that he promised, and that caused a exodus of black people from the Republican Party like never before. It caused them to leave the Republican Party because of it. And that's why many black people who used to be for the party of Lincoln are no longer for the party of Lincoln, because the party of Lincoln stopped being the party of Lincoln in 1927 and 28. When they turned their backs on the black people that suffered damage from the flood of the great flooding of the Mississippi in 1927. And Herbert Hoover and Calvin Coolidge were the two culprits that caused black people to turn away from the Republican Party. That was one of them. It wasn't the only reason, but it was one of the big reasons that black people quit being Republicans, quit being the party, backing the party of Lincoln, because the party of Lincoln turned on them. It turned on them big time. Let's continue.
Okay, so a Republican congresswoman has gotten in some hot water because she's equated Charlie Kirk to Martin Luther King. And this, of course, got the attention of Martin Luther King's youngest daughter, who said she'd like a word with this comparison here. Now, let's be very reasonable here. First and foremost, anybody, any single person who has celebrated the taking of Charlie Kirk's life, any person who celebrates or encourages violence and an extrajudicial unaliving of somebody has no place in my show, no place in my life. I don't want anything to do with you. But separate from that, there's a reasonable conversation to be had about how much somebody can be memorialized and lionized, and respectfully, to equate somebody to Martin Luther King, who I don't think is deserving of the same status, the irony of which Charlie Kirk has said out loud many times, that Martin Luther King wasn't deserving of his own holiday, that the Civil Rights Act was a mistake, many other pretty hateful comments about black people, whether saying that black women don't have the computational intellect as white people, or saying that if he sees a black surgeon, he'd be nervous, or a black pilot. Respectfully, you can talk about the contributions of somebody's life here, but comparing that individual to Martin Luther King, I don't think is fair. I just think the country's lost its mind. You can be reasonable and you can hold multiple thoughts at the same time, but again, anybody who's celebrating the unaliving of somebody, I don't want to know you. I don't want to talk to you. You're an awful person, in my opinion. That doesn't mean we can't be reasonable here, and this person and many people should not be equated to Dr. King.
That gentleman there, his name is Josh LaFazon, I believe. Josh LaFazon, I think that's the way that you pronounce his last name, LaFazon. I agree with him wholeheartedly that no one should be happy that Charlie Kirk died the way he died. No one deserves to be assassinated just because you didn't agree with the things that they said. But let's face it, this guy that assassinated Charlie Kirk was also... His family were conservative Republicans from Utah. They were conservatives. And so you had that when this first happened, you had everybody on the right, including the president, Donald Trump, talking about it was the radical left that did it. The radical left. Now we find out that this guy, and I said it, like I said it online before they had found out that we don't know what this guy's political leanings are. As far as I'm concerned, he could be a conservative Republican who felt that Charlie Kirk was taking the Republican Party down the wrong rabbit hole. And apparently, I was right, not because I'm some prophet or something, but because it just seemed that way. It seemed that way, that's the way it was. And so, you can't be comparing Charlie Kirk to Martin Luther King or JFK. These people are all distinct individuals and they said different things. But the one thing that you can say for sure about Charlie Kirk is that his statements that he have made were more racially motivated than any of, whether it was Lincoln or JFK or MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., or Jesus Christ. Especially of all of them, Jesus Christ. He was nowhere close to that. Jesus Christ would have stirred up that racial hatred like that. And for Jesus Christ said in the Beatitude, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are the peacemakers. I think that's in Matthew 5:19. I'm not sure, but he said that in his word. And what Charlie Kirk was saying was not peaceable at all. It was not a peaceful things. They were not peaceful things that he was spewing out of his mouth. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the last clip.
We don't feel like ourselves. We haven't felt like ourselves in a while. And I'm sorry to get political, but I'm just going to be honest. We haven't felt like ourselves since Barack Obama. I just think he was such a slick snake. You know, he was this affable guy who was like wearing good suits and looked the part and sounded the part and dressed the part, but was so divisive in his messaging. The left, they look at you like when you say this, they don't know what you're talking about. It's like, because you don't pay attention to the other half of the country. You only pay attention to your absurd news sources, which spin and spin and spin to protect Democrats, especially if they're named Obama. He's the one who started to inject race where no one had been doing it. He's the one who started to use his pen and the phone to shove things down our throat that we didn't want. He's the one who shoved through an entitlement on our health care and our personal doctor visits that he promised he wouldn't mess with, and then he did, really hurting people, causing massive anger and open lies. He never missed an opportunity to twist the knife on the racial issue. He would do it subtly and in his own way, but it was very clear what he was doing. For the first time, we had a president who weighed in on legal cases before they'd played out. We never did that. That was a taboo that had never been crossed before him. And Donald Trump was the reason Barack Obama, reverse that. Barack Obama was the reason Donald Trump came about, that he was born as a political figure. They say Trump's divisive. He was the antidote. He was the answer to the divisiveness of Barack Obama. And we just haven't felt like ourselves for years now.
Did you hear that poison? Could you just feel it seeping out of her? We haven't felt like ourselves in years. Barack Obama, we just haven't felt like ourselves since Barack Obama. That freaking Nigger was in the White House, and it will never be the same because of it. That freaking nigger wrecked the world. He became the leader of the free nation, of the most powerful nation in the world, and will never be the same. See, these people would rather burn in hell than repent. They'd rather go to hell over their hatred and burn forever than repent and say, my hatred for someone who's of a different color is wrong and Jesus doesn't like it. No, they don't think that way at all. They'd rather go to hell and burn for it. It's like, I don't know if you ever seen the movie Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan. When he was after Kirk, he said, I'll chase him around perdition's flames before I give him up. Well, they'll burn in perdition's flames before they give up their hatred. They ain't giving it up. No. They'd rather burn in hell. Black man became president. Oh, that scorched them to the core. I mean, it scorched them. It scorched their bone marrow out of their bones. They can feel it in their bones. That's how bad it is. This is what all this is about, really. And these black, conservative, right-wing content creators that push that right-wing conservative agenda. Like I said, I don't push no liberal agenda, liberal democratic agenda. I vote. I have voted for both parties before, but I don't push their agenda because Jesus is the only cure for all the ills in this world, okay? That's what I believe. I stand on it. But they are so pissed off. This is what Charlie Kirk was about. That's why they're so pissed off about the civil rights movement. Because without the civil rights movement setting things in order that was right, what Dr. Martin Luther King and all the civil rights leaders did, it led to Barack Obama becoming president. We never would have had a black president without Dr. Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. We never would have had a Barack Obama if it wasn't for Dr. King and Medgar Evers and all the other black civil rights leaders that fought for our rights, fought for equality. It never would have happened, and they know that. That's why they're so pissed off about the civil rights movement. And you black conservative right-wing content creators, you're grifters. You know you get a lot of views by bashing black people concerning their politics, concerning having a black president, and you get pats on the head from your white boys and say, good little black boy, you're doing our bidding, and you make money from it. Well, I don't push the right and I don't push the left. The only thing that's going to last in this world is what you do for Jesus, what you do with Jesus. That is it. I don't stand on any of it. But I'm telling you right now, there will never be a black Republican president. Not in the current iteration and racist iteration of this current Republican Party. It will not happen unless something drastically changes. And that's not happening no time soon because Trump done took over. And let's look at some things that Trump was guilty of. He had sex with a porn star and a Playboy bunny, Stormy Daniels, aka Stephanie Clifford, and the Playboy bunny Karen McDougal. He had an affair with her. Trump has cheated on every wife he has ever been married to. He had Nick Fuentes. If you don't know who Nick Fuentes, Google it. Nick Fuentes is a Nazi sympathizer. Trump had dinner with him at Mar-a-Lago. Trump had dinner with him. If you look at the white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, and neo-Nazis, they all voted for Donald Trump because they believed he is one of them. They believe it to the core that he's one of them, that deep down inside, he's one of them. And for these black conservative right-wing content creators to ignore all this. Now let's continue with the comparisons. Donald Trump ran for president in 2020 to stay out of jail. He had the secret documents case going. He was convicted on 34 counts of business fraud in the state of New York. And then he had the insurrection charge against him of starting an insurrection. He was being charged for that also. Remember January the 6th when they went down to the Capitol building? He did that. He started that. So he was running for president to stay out of jail. That's a bad thing. And you can't ignore that. You can't ignore those people at the Capitol beating the Capitol police with flagpoles and tyrants and just, I mean, some of them suffered physical harm because of those thousands of Donald Trump supporters that marched on Washington down to the Capitol. And it was crazy. It was crazy. Now, if Barack Obama had did that, he'd be in jail right now. He'd be in jail. A black man could never start an insurrection like Donald Trump did and get away with it. It just would never happen. But that's racism in this country. And you black content creators, you make me sick to my stomach. You ones that are conservative Republicans, because you're ignoring all that evil and you're pushing an agenda just because you're making money off of it. You are the lowest of the lowest and the scummiest of the scummiest. You're scum. I don't want to have anything to do with you. And if you look on the screen, I got some of their pictures up there right now. I'm not even going to mention their names because they're not even worth it. You're not worth mentioning your names. But your pictures are up there. That's how I see things, folks. This is what's going on. Our subject was today are black conservative right-wing contenders. They're protecting Charlie. They're defending Charlie Kirk because they are... What was the word I used? Grifters. There's a group out back in the 60s called the Platters, 50s and 60s, and they had a song out, "Oh, I'm the Great Pretender." Well, these content creators, black conservative right-wing content creators, they could start their own group called the Black Grifters because they're the great pretenders, and they're doing it to make money. They're doing it. One of them even said when Joe Biden was in office that he made more money when Trump was in office because he was pushing the Trump agenda. That's a fact, Jack. That's a fact. You cannot be a black man or a decent white man or white woman and not look at that as evil. If you listen to Megyn Kelly, she was so pissed off that Barack Obama had ever became president, it burned in her belly like a fire. Some white people, some conservative white that call themselves Christians, they woke up for 8 years with a stomach ache. Belly aching. "Martha, is that black man still in the White House?" "Yes, he is, George. That's why my stomach still hurt. Oh, God. Jesus, what did we do to you to allow this to happen? What did we do to you? Why did you let this happen, Jesus? What did we do?" That's what it is. That's what it is. That's all I have for you today. Hit the like and subscribe button. If you like what I'm saying, I'm not here to be on anybody's good side. I'm just here to tell the truth. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. God is truth. Be blessed.
Girl, look at me, I'm a man on a mission. I'm out to prove my love for you. So close your eyes, I'll take a ride into the night. Oh baby, I got a lot in store for you.